Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Now we will discuss the politics of translation. The content of this module is written by Mrs. Ria Roy Choudhury. Now let us talk about the politics of translation. Translation is the act of communicating the meaning of a source language text by means of target language. Etymologically, the English word translation is derived from the Latin word translatio, which itself comes from trans and from fero, the supine form of which is latum, together meaning a carrying across or a bringing across. It is one of the basic human activities and is thus an age-old phenomena. Even when we name an object, we translate, and naming object is undoubtedly a basic linguistic need, owing to which G.J.B. Prasad remarks, all language are born in translation. In fact, the means by which people from various regions and cultures come together and communicate are translation. As Prasad remarks, great civilizations are born in translations because of translations. Translation is bound to be multilingual as well as interdisciplinary, encompassing languages, linguistics, communicate on studies, philosophy, and range of types of cultural studies. And to discuss the politics of translation, we must focus on the hegemony of languages. In the process of translation, certain languages receive more prominence than the others. According to Spivak, English and some other languages of the ex-colonizers are hegemonic languages, with the most amount of prominence being given to them. Translation from these languages into any other language fails to translate the ideas of the original, as the translator tries to make it more accessible to the Western readers and carve his work according to their needs. The same concern is shared by Tejaswini Niranjana in her work Citing Translation, History, Post-Structuralism and the Colonial Context, where the translation is viewed as discourses which inform the hegemonic apparatus that belong to the ideological structure of colonial rule. Her focus is to highlight how the colonizers have used translation as a means of re-establishing the image of the Orient, or rather Western orientation of the East. As a consequence, there arose three main drawbacks of translation studies. Firstly, power imbalance between several languages has not been paid any attention. Secondly, Niranjana considers Western translation theory to be flawed as the West repressed the non-West. Thirdly, she questions the humanistic enterprise of translation as in the context of colonization. Translation builds a conceptual image of colonial domination into the discourse of Western philosophy. Authority, legitimacy, and power are what translation is implicitly related to. Translation is not merely an exposure to the world. It is rather a channel through which foreign influences seep into the native culture and often challenge. The use of translation as a hegemonic weapon has been an age-old phenomenon. However, the power politics related with translation is recognized intricately with the help of colonial and feminist approaches. Now, let us talk something about translation and the colonization. Translation and colonization are related on the ground that translation has always been an active participant in the process of colonization and in disseminating an ideologically motivated image of colonized people. The question of identity was important for a colonized society, and it subjugated psyche in the same way as the feeling of superiority and invincibility was for the colonizers. As far as the colonized were concerned, translation was an appropriate method of releasing their own literary granary before the world. Keeping the aforementioned points into consideration, it would not be wrong to state that translation is a political act. On one hand, for the colonized community, it is perhaps a patriotic act, an attempt of exposing a country's rich literary tradition to the world. On the other hand, the colonizers found that through translation, it was easier for them to map and govern over their colonies more efficiently. Translation of Indian literatures in colonial times was also with the motive of enriching the target language culture by enhancing its access to desirable elements and thoughts identified in Indian literature but absent in European target language literature. And we can take few examples like the translation of Manu Samhita during colonial period, and the translation of Abhigyan Shakuntalam by William Jones and its later exposure to the world of Europe. Now let us talk about translation in Europe. The aim of translation activities in Europe has been to open the continent to the idea of the Orient. Apparently the purpose is to enrich the cultural status of the works translated. However, manipulation and distortion form an inseparable part of translation. The hidden agenda has been to domesticate the Orient or tame the native. Though translation, the foreign was known with the notion that they were subservient. In other words, it was a method used to proclaim European superiority. The colony can be viewed as a translational imitation which is inferior. Their identities have been rewritten and reframed by the colonizers. One of the most eminent scholars who translated literature of the Orient for the West was William Jones, president of the Asiatic Society of Bengal and a pioneer in Orientalist scholarship. Working from the premise of cultural superiority of Europe and faith in the advanced nature of European civilization, Jones divided the world into two hubs. Europe was equated with reason and taste, while the Orient was a hub of imagination. His translation of the Gita Govinda designates it as a mystical text, while in Hindu mythology the text deals with more than mysticism. It is an amalgamation of eros, devotion and mysticism. Thus, it would not be wrong to assert that Jones wanted to translate it conforming to the European taste. Translation and feminism, also a very significant field to understand the politics of translation. In the seminal essay, The Politics of Translation by Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak brings together post-colonialist, post-structuralist and feminist approaches. Spivak is one of the most eminent feminist critics on translation who calls on surrender of self by the translator to the text. It is to dissolve one's own identity and to work under someone else's title. She emphasizes upon the fact that a woman translator should consider language as a clue to the working of a gendered agency. For a non-European woman translator, bringing up the rhetoricity of the original is often insufficient. This insufficiency is often deliberate so that the needs and demands of the target audience are given more priority. Sherry Simon identifies sexism in translation studies, which preaches the notions of faithfulness, fidelity, dominance. Subnotions and images were evident in the 17th century in the translations into French. Las Belles Infidèles that were aesthetically beautiful but unfaithful, or George Taylor's depiction of translation with an image of penetration in After Babel. The feminist theorists draw a parallel between translation and the status of women in society, as both are considered as inferior. While translation is inferior to the original, women are to the men in a male-dominated society, thereby placing both translation and women to the bottom of the social and literary ladder. Now let us come into the point of translation in India, and let us see the politics of translation in Indian context. Translation in India must have begun since ancient times, owing to the fact that it is a multilingual nation. The 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution has listed 22 languages being spoken in India, namely Assamese, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, Konkani, Malayalam, Manipuri, Marathi, Nepali, Odia, Punjabi, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Tamil, Telugu, Urdu, Bodo, Santhali, Maithili and Dogri. However, the actual number of languages spoken in India far exceeds the number. The People's Linguistic Survey of India, which is popularly known as PLSI, a linguistic survey launched in 2010 and conducted by 3,500 volunteers, including 2,000 language experts, social historians, and staff of Bhasha Research and Publication Center, Baroda, identifies 780 languages in India. This translation of one language into another, for example, translation of Telugu literature into Bangla, Malayalam, Hindi, and vice versa, was done with the purpose of establishing understanding between various linguistic, regional, and cultural communities of independent India. It is to enrich the spirit of unity in diversity and bridge the gap between various states with diverse cultures united by the same national history. This kind of intra-Indian translation is rooted in medieval India in 14th and 15th century, owing to India's multilingualism. Every Indian speaks in at least 2 languages. Historically, there are 3 stages of translation activity in India: oral, written and printed, though performance tradition also was there. And we consider performance, translation of oral tradition into performance or manuscript into performance as performative translation. The oral tradition remains untraced, but the written traditions rooted in the medieval times began when excerpts from Sanskrit texts were translated into regional language. For instance, Ganeshwara translated the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata were also translated into several regional versions. As a consequence, the holy scriptures, which were once inaccessible to the middle or lower class, now became accessible to all of them. Thus, it can be said that intra-Indian translations had a purpose of spiritual revolution. Also, translation in India did not pay much importance to faithfulness. Often the translation took ample freedom in narrating a tale in a new fashion, according to the needs of the target audience, a process that P. Lal names as transcreation. For instance, Vishnu De, while translating Eliot's Christmas, names it as Janmashtami, since both the occasions celebrate the birth of religious leaders, Jesus Christ and Lord Krishna, respectively. By changing the name, thus makes it more relatable and acceptable in a Hindu-dominated country such as India. During colonization, translation was carried out in order to ensure administrative efficiency. It was a means by which the English could reach out to the Indians. However, intra-Indian translation was not encouraged much, since that would have unified the Indians from diverse cultures and ethnicities under the umbrella of the same nationalistic and historical heritage, which would have been detrimental to the exercise of the British policy of divide and rule. Now let us talk few things about the politics of intra-Indian translation, means translation from one Indian language to another Indian language, including English. The political significance of translation can also be traced in India. Interestingly, Sanskrit enjoyed a status in India similar as that of English across the globe. It not only was a language of the elite class, but also exhibited the attributes of a power language, as it was a part of Hindu inheritance. Therefore, translation of Sanskrit into the other Desi languages was an attempt to release scriptures from the monopolist custody of Sanskrit Pandits. Shishir Kumar Das writes, I quote, "This phenomena may be partly explained by a scholarly strategy towards the dissemination of Brahminical learning and Indian classical heritage, and partly as an assertion of the indigenous literary tradition against rapid westernization." I unquote. The Bhakti movement had a purpose of translating poetry from Sanskrit to the language of the people, thereby transforming the language of spirituality from the power language of Sanskrit to the languages used by common men. Thus, religious power transfer was also a major concern during translation. One of the area to trace the politics of translation is the politics of publication house, the market economy, the circulation of text. All these are very much related in the issue of politics of translation. So let us talk few things about marketability of translation in India. With the colonization of the British, English entered India as a language which was there to stay, owing to both nationalistic and marketing interest. Translation in English eventually became a significant phenomenon. One of the major organizations to have taken the initiative of translating Indian literature is the Sahitya Akademi, established on 12th March 1954 with its headquarters at Rabindra Bhavan, Delhi. This organization dedicates itself to the promotion of literatures in the languages of India. Not only does it organize national and regional workshops, but also provides grants to authors, publishes books and journals, and organizes the annual Sahitya Akademi Award. Its library has one of the richest collection of translated text of Indian literature and forms one of the largest multilingual libraries in India. Another organization which promotes Indian literature is National Book Trust, an Indian publishing house founded in 1957 as an autonomous body under the Ministry of Education of the Government of India. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, visualized that NBT would be a publishing house that would publish books at low cost. Its activities also include promotion of Indian books abroad. It also aims at spreading literacy by publishing reading materials in several Indian languages for all age groups. In fact, National Book Trust Adan Pradan translation series focuses on the classical literature of India, outstanding works of Indian authors in Indian languages and their translation from one Indian language to another. Also, the trust aims at paying attention to those genres of publishing which, despite their importance, have not been adequately covered in India, and thus it motivates publishers to explore the hitherto unexplored areas of publishing. Now, the role of the private publishing houses. The Sahitya Akademi, which had not included English as one of its scheduled languages until the 60s, awarded a translation prize for English in the 80s. Katha began as an organization initiating translations in the 90s and introduced the A.K. Ramanujan Award for Translation in 2000. The Crossword group of bookshops in India introduced English translation. There have been more than 5 national seminars on translation in India in the past few years. About 20 universities teach courses on translation studies and Indian literature in English. Penguin and Picador have also included ILET in their list of books. Translation of Indian regional languages into English has always been wrought with complication. This is because on one hand, English in India is viewed as a power language, and on the other, it incorporates the baggage of its colonial inheritance. However, with the influence of globalization in the recent centuries and branding of Indian literature in the international book and awards market, especially after Salman Rushdie received the Booker Prize in 1981, there has been a boom in translation market in which there has been a huge contribution of the private publication houses. In 1988 and 1990, Katha, one of the significant contributors in the Indian literature in translation industry, was founded. In 1996, Macmillan published its first 11 novel set of its modern Indian novels in translation. Macmillan published its first 11 novel set of its modern Indian novels in translation. Orient Longman came up with its series of literature in translation. Thus, the goals of translation extended from enhancing national culture to making it a more marketable act. This was an opportunity for the private publishers to carve out a niche for themselves in the international market. Moreover, the private publishing houses were also carrying out the missionary activity, exploring unexplored, which National Book Trust has been ambitious of. Now, let us conclude our discussion. It has been discussed how translation has been influenced by several intricate processes and factors such as colonization, decolonization, patriotism, marketability, a self-interest of private publishing houses, globalization and cultural exchange. India, being a multilingual nation, gives rise to a multicultural scenario. This makes translation of Indian literature even more complex a process. Indian literature in English translation is further complicated owing to the ambiguity with which English language is treated in India. On one hand, it has been the language of the colonizers, which make it a power language, and on the other, it is viewed as a means of enhancing social status. On one hand, it is a means of reaching out to the world and expose India's rich tradition and culture, while on the other hand, it is a threat to the regional languages of India, which tend to get obsolete with an ever increasing community of people speaking, writing and translating in English. This paradox of Indian literature in English translation makes the task of the translator even more difficult. If we would like to see the politics of translation in Indian context, we can see it from more other perspectives also, like the whole category of Indian literature, whole idea of Indian literature actually made through translation, through intra-Indian translation, including all the languages of India and including English language translation also. So when we teach Indian literature in our academic discipline, we have to go to the translation, to the intra-Indian translation, because India is multilingual country, you all know, and the translation, intra-Indian translation or translation of Indian literature into English makes the category of Indian literature, because otherwise it is not possible to have access to all the Indian literatures. And now it is about the politics of the English literature department also, that most of the English literature department, or if I am not wrong, all the English literature department of the universities of India already introduced Indian literature in translation, Indian literature in English translation. So only through the translation, through the intra-Indian translation, we can imagine Indian literature, or we can have access to the Indian knowledge, ancient, medieval, modern and the contemporary knowledge, and the knowledge of diverse field, knowledge of different community, knowledge of different language and knowledge of different cultures. So translation in Indian context is very much significant, and the politics of translation also involves Indian academics, Indian literary disciplines. It may be comparative literature, it may be comparative Indian literature, or it may be English. Thank you.